and where necessary controlled by the conditions on the outline consent. So we're taking questions to Mr. Worthington, and as he's the only one allowed to take questions, maybe our legal officer can come in to clarify things. I'm going to take, as long as you want to ask these questions, members. So I think Councillor Mann had his hand up first.
If I can get this working. I understand that community groups could be given the chance to buy the piece of land on which Harrogate Springwater wants to expand. The council, I understand, will have to sell the land which it owns to Harrogate Springwater. Also, I understand the council has already designated the Pinewoods an asset of community value, which means it must consult the community before any land is sold. So I understand this gives local community groups the opportunity to put an offer together and place a bid. And it is open, I think, to the local planning authority to decide that listing as an asset of community value is a material consideration in this case. If I could ask Glenn to give the committee some guidance on this issue, please.
The area of land in question is listed as an asset of community value. That is not material to the determination of this planning application. If the planning consent was granted and the scheme was to proceed, there is still a parallel or an ancillary legal procedure to go through in order to deal with that status as an asset of community value, and there would be an opportunity, period of 6 weeks, I think it is, during which it would be made available for other people to bid to acquire it. But in terms of the determination of this application, the status of that land is not material. There is a separate ancillary legislative mechanism to deal with that.
Any further points, Councillor Mann? Okay. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to follow up. I do think the asset of community value is an important consideration. I totally acknowledge what you said. For me, there is a potential conflict of interest. If the council approves this plan, because of the agreement it's got with Danone, there is a financial benefit to the council. And if it were to sell the land to Danone, again, there is another financial consideration. So the first part for me is, how is the council managing that potential conflict of interest? And secondly, my understanding is that anybody can put planning in for a piece of land that they don't own, which clearly this is what this application is about. And my understanding is that to do that, there's obviously significant financial risk, which Danone has obviously decided to go for. It needs to be legally transparent and fair. And my understanding is that a Certificate B should be submitted to the landowner so that they know that that planning permission has been put in. So I just want to know whether that documentation, I believe it's a Certificate B, has been submitted so that we can, I'd like to be able to see that document to see whether it's been issued. I don't know whether we can make it available or not. And if that certificate has been provided, presumably North Yorkshire has said yes, so that that certificate can be issued. I'd like to know if it has been issued, what was the comment on that certificate and the notification. So if we can get a comment on that. And if the council has supported that by issuing the certificate, surely that is predetermining an application by saying that the council is quite happy to provide that land for planning. And I just want to understand the technicalities of that. So has that certificate been issued or not? And if it hasn't, can we legally proceed without a certificate, effectively saying that the council will at some stage potentially offer that land to Danone? Thank you.
Right, I'll try. That's quite a long question, so bear with me. I think if I can summarise or attempt to summarise, if I'm doing it fairly, I think there are two main points there, Councillor Walker. First of all, you're asking about potential conflicts of interest given the leasehold arrangement and the fact that there are contractual relationships between, well, now North Yorkshire Council. It was formerly Harrogate Council, Borough Council, but it's novated, to use the legal term, into the new authority following local government reorganisation. And then your second question concerned what I would broadly describe as the validation of the planning application that has been submitted and the procedure that we go through in order for that to take place. So in relation to the first, the potential conflict of interest, the scenario which we're faced with is not without precedent. Councils are asked to determine planning applications in their capacity as a local planning authority for all sorts of proposed developments in which the council corporately may have contractual interest. Similarly, councils are asked to determine planning applications for development on land which they own. Councils are asked to determine planning applications which they submit themselves. So there's the general point about potential conflict of interest prevails in all of those cases, and the way in which we deal with that is we deal with that via the independence of this committee. Now, at the start of the meeting, Councillor Aldred, the chair, was very careful to say that he had had some involvement with discussions regarding contractual arrangements in his capacity as a town councillor, Harrogate Town Council, the newly created Harrogate Town Council. But he came to this with an open mind. He hadn't prejudged the planning application. It would be determined following his consideration of the report, the presentation that comes on. Sorry, I'm putting words into your mouth, but I know that's what you meant. Now, provided that all of the councillors in this committee can say the same thing here today, then that's fine. You can proceed to determine this application. If, however, somebody says, well, actually, I want this to proceed because I think it would be a good thing for the council to secure the financial benefits which would accrue from this, then you ought not to do that. You should recuse yourself from the committee. You can't prejudge the application in that way. So I think there is a perfectly proper way for us to navigate our way through that and determine the application. In relation to your second point, which is what I described as issues of validation, you're quite right. You don't have to own land in order to submit a planning application. I could apply to develop a facility on land that any of you own, and provided that I pay the application fee, provided that I issue the requisite notices and the council is satisfied that I have submitted a legally robust and procedurally correct planning application, then the council will validate that. Now, this application, or rather it will have been validated several years ago, won't it now, several years ago. I'm saying that, yes, it has been validated and yes, those certificates will have been issued. I'm saying that, but I'm looking to my planning colleagues on the right-hand side. Whether or not we can produce the certificate B now, I'm not sure, but I'll look to John and Nick on those points.
Nick has kindly looked through the file and yes, certificate B was served on the council. I think you may have got the balance the wrong way around there. It's the applicant who serves certificate B on the council, not the council serving it on the applicant. So the certificate B is effective. If you don't own the land, you have to tell the person who owns the land that you are applying, and they did do that.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor Walker? Any other question? Okay. Any other members wanting questions to the officers? Councillor Broadbank.
Right. Working, yeah. It's a question on things that are in place at the moment, and I have a concern that some things have yet to be resolved. I've noticed in 210, for instance, says the against the local plan policies, consider the application submitted or can be made acceptable. Why can we consider something when everything isn't in place?
Who wants, Mr. Worthington?
Sorry, can you elaborate on which paragraph that was from?
210. Oh, well, I've got, 210 I've got.
That's in the officer report, Councillor Broadbank, yeah?
So I think the issue at play there is, as I've explained, the Section 106 legal agreement isn't complete today. And that's not an uncommon practice within determination of planning applications. Section 106 agreements are routinely resolved post a committee meeting. So our belief is that that Section 106 agreement can be completed, will be completed. There's been a legal change through the Greenfield case. We have to publicly make that document available at 2 stages before the decision notice will be issued, and that we would do. But that is the issue that's still, as far as this application is concerned, unresolved. There are, I think, 3 conditions attached to the outline that require details to be submitted. One is in relation to highway matters. We don't have a submission for that, but I'm sure that will follow should this should reserved matters be given. There is a post-construction certificate required to be submitted. Clearly, until the building's constructed, we can't receive that. And then, as is recorded in the report, there's a condition in relation to ecology, and that is under consideration. A submission has been made, and that is under consideration as we speak. But that is separate to the application that's before members today.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Broadbank? And any other question to officers? Anybody else? Councillor Lacey.
So I'll just take you outside the remit perhaps, but there's a purpose in the question. Recognise fully that the application before us today is about appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. So that's what we're considering. I am though reflecting on the passage of time. I'm also reflecting on some of the things that may have been approved and agreed and satisfactorily agreed, where there may be a change of circumstances or new evidence or whatever that something was awry. I suppose the question is how is that monitored? How is it evaluated, and what might the role? We've talked about the transfer from Harrogate Borough Council to North Yorkshire Council. The area committee here is, of course, a subcommittee of North Yorkshire Council, but may well have a role in future in terms of ensuring that what goes ahead in a consistent way with the planning application, etc. So there's those. I'll use a little example in terms of new evidence or whatever. This summer has been extremely dry. The aquifer from which the water is being drawn at potentially double the rate that it has historically could have ecological impacts that were not envisaged. Now that wouldn't be material to today's decision, but what are the mechanisms by which were that to become material through whatever evidence that either redress or conversation or action could be taken, not necessarily to overturn a planning application, but in order to see the good of the ecological environment.
Can we have silence in the gallery, please, whilst proceedings are carrying on? Mr. Worthington.
The outline is granted. We can't go back and revisit that now. That is a permission that exists. So that's the position where we're at.
Can I ask for silence whilst the officer is speaking, please?
As I've mentioned, there is a condition in relation to ecology. That's under consideration. I have no reason to believe that we will not be able to discharge that condition. So that's the position we're at.
You want to come back, Councillor
And
Lacey?
just a clarification, because I note in the consultees that Yorkshire Water, relevant to the example that I gave, made no observations on this current application. Now, I presume that is because of the restricted nature, the elements under consideration, and that their previous input on ecology, water, etc., would have been made at previous stages.
Yeah, we've asked them for comments on the matters that are before members today. So their comments in relation to this application are pertinent to those issues, yes.
I think, Councillor Walker, you have a further question.
Yeah, so I've actually got three, but I was trying to give others the opportunity to speak. So I'll just go through them one at a time, if that's okay. So obviously,
Can we get the answers one at a time as well?
yeah.
So three questions, three answers.
Yeah, let's do it like that. So obviously, we need to make it the decision based on the areas that are in the proposal. So if we just look at the appearance first of all, you've said it meets the criteria, great. But I just wonder if you could just expand on that a little bit more. So how does the industrial design that is in the plans comply with local policy HP3, which requires the development to protect and enhance the spatial qualities and characteristic of the area, particularly as it's adjacent to a designated conservation area and special landscape area. So if you're able to give a bit more detail of why you feel that it meets that criteria, that'd be helpful.
Sure. I mean, the starting point is obviously that the principle of a building in this position is already approved. So it's the detail of the appearance of that building. Now, the building is on one side adjoining the existing building, on the other side facing a retaining wall. The rear of the building, if I can describe it as that, is into the service yard. So there's one key northern-facing elevation that is of importance. Now, the building design is set down to limit its appearance. There will be planting in front of it, and it is clad in a variety of materials that we believe will give it its appearance in a manner that is not intrusive in its locality. So that's the judgment we've come to.
Question 2.
Thank you, Chair. So about the landscape character, so given the site's location within the Pine Woods and Valley Gardens SLA, how have you come up with the justification and conclusion that this does not cause significant harm to landscape, contrary to C9 and the landscape character assessment in 2004?
I think that question is really pertinent to the granting of outline consent. If you can explain which of the reserve matters you're thinking of there.
I just think it's going to have a huge impact on the site next door, and I can't see, reading the documentations, how that we're still trying to overcome that. It just is right next door to an area that is really sensitive, and I just don't see how we've mitigated that enough. I just can't get the evidence out of the documentation.
I mean, again, to repeat, the principle of a building there is established. In relation to the direction that the building is set against a retaining wall, so effectively that the height of the building is at the same point of that, so the building is therefore set down. I don't know if we can put that on the screen, Edward.
Just to speed matters up a bit, maybe you could ask your third question and we can come back.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, it's here, sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'll put my mic on. So what we're looking at is, this is looking from the service yard towards the building, and at the far end you will see that the height of the building is the equivalent of a retaining wall, and then the Pinewood area is beyond that. So when viewed from the opposite direction, the roof of the building is at the same level as the ground. In other words, the building is set down to mitigate its impact. So it by all intents and purposes, views are limited. I'm not going to say that they're non-existent, because is the case, but it is limited by setting the building down, and that is mitigating views from that direction, coupled with the fact that the building is not hard up to the boundary there. There will be planting beyond that that's shown on the landscaping plan, which is there. So within the red line, if I can get the cursor working, there's the area there between the red line starts at that point. So there's a significant proportion within the site, within the red line, which isn't actually where the building is, and then the building is set down significantly.
Are you coming back, Councillor Walker, on that specific point? No,
don't need to come back on that specifically.
Okay.
And
Question 3.
The final question, although it's not specifically what we're determining today, it's really a point of clarification. So it's about the biodiversity net gain, and I know that that was in the solicitor's letter. So for me, part of that has been answered. We need to make sure there's no loss of biodiversity under condition 12. There seems to be a slight conflict in the report from the ecologist of the 8th of December that says that that needs to be discharged prior to the reserve matter. Why is there the slight contradiction? And I just wondered if you could answer that fully about where we need to determine about the biodiversity net gain. Is that, have we pre-discharged it? Are we happy with that? Or is that something that we need to put in the 106 agreement?
Well, firstly, the outline was granted before biodiversity net gain legislation came into force, so the principle was established before that was in place. In relation to ecological matters, if I can describe it as that, that's where it's controlled by condition 12. Now, we believe that as officers, determination of the reserve matters can take place prior to the discharge of condition 12, so that we brought the application forward at this point. So that's how we see it. That there is no conflict by determining the reserve matters in advance of the discharge of condition 12. Condition 12 will ensure no net loss, but it won't follow current biodiversity net gain requirements because the application predates that.
If I could just come back on that, and this is the issue I really have. I get the regulations are what they are, but if this planning application had come to us today right from the scratch, then we'd have to put a biodiversity net gain in. We'd have to be much more stringent in determining any planning. And that is my real concern about this application, that we are not protecting the environment enough. There is not enough rigour because of the determination that was done in when the outline was done, which was years and years ago, because from my perspective, there seems to be a delay, and well, a huge delay, and you know, the cynic in me wants to know why. So as I say, I get where we are, but if I am passing anything, I want to make sure that there's real rigour in anything that we do.
Okay, I don't, unless you want to come, do you want to answer that, Mr. Worthington? I don't think it really was a question.
Condition 12 is subject to examination by the council's ecologists, and I don't think it's within their job remit to not achieve the issues that you've just outlined. So I would have confidence that the issues you are talking about would be achieved. In relation to applications and change of legislation, that happens all the time. It's not unique to this application, and we can't bring back every application that was granted prior to the introduction of biodiversity net gain and ask to redetermine them. It's just the way that the timing that matters came forward. I understand your concern, but that is the legality of the permission we have before us.
Can I just remind members that we are not yet in debate. We will have a chance to come back and revisit maybe some of these issues when we do go into debate. But at the moment, we're just asking questions to the officers. So Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just build on one of the questions which Matt recently asked in connection with the appearance? Could we put the site plan on the screen, Chair, if we may?
Is it the elevation or the actual
It's the
plan?
it's
with
the actual
wood?
plan,
Yeah.
the layout. Yeah. Now, if this was a residential housing application, I understand there's a sort of rule or a custom, if you like, whereby the extension, because basically this is an extension, the extension should not be bigger than the original building or house. And the extension in residential terms for a residential house, I've been told numerous times in this committee, always has to be, quote, subordinate or smaller than the original building. Now, looking at that, it seems the extension is quite a bit bigger than the original building. So I just wondered if that was a consideration, and if so, should we have thought about that when we came up with the recommendation in the report? Thank you, Chair.
So just changing the slide, that's the parameters plan that was agreed at outline stage, and the committee that determined the outline, the yellow area is the developable area. So you can see at outline stage, approval was granted for a building of up to that size. In other words, that was the approval given, that they're the parameters that were set at that stage, and the building that's proposed today, the scale layout of it follow those parameters.
Any further questions, members?
Yes.
Mr. Broadbank.
Question. On the regarding the principle of development, I noticed in 2017 it was acknowledged that the proposal would harm the landscape of the special. Sorry, would harm the landscape of the special landscape area. This extension is much bigger. Now, if it was recognised and acknowledged that it would could harm the landscape, then in this thing, which is going to be about twice the size of the whole complex, how can that still be acceptable?
So those comments are in relation to an extension that was just on the screen of that size. There's no increase in size. The building that's before you today follows the parameters that were before members in 2017. So I don't quite understand the question.
The building itself, that the bit in yellow, but it's the building I'm talking about, the size of the extension compared to the existing building.
Yeah, but that's what was approved in 2017, and that's the parameters within which you're making your decision today. You can't go back on that. That was what was agreed at that point.
You're looking puzzled, Councillor Broadbank, but I think that's where we are, perhaps unfortunately. Any further questions from any more members? I do have a couple myself. Mr. Worthington, in your presentation, you alluded to the number of jobs being created.
Yeah.
Can we just double check? That's 50 jobs and it's full-time equivalents. It's not just 50 part-time jobs. It's actually 50 full-time equivalent jobs.
I don't know the answer to that. The information, the report says 32 jobs, as you saw in the agenda, and I was provided information by the applicants to suggest it was 50. So,
well, actually, we've got the applicant coming up, haven't we? So I'm going to take the chair's prerogative and ask him that when he appears, and he's smiling. And the other question was, it's been alluded to several times about the timeline, and it is a long time from 2017, and I would hope well, I know we don't normally go that length of time from an original application to a reserved matters application. I'm aware we've had COVID in between, and that's been a factor as well. But is there anything else we ought to be knowing? It is an excessive amount of time in getting from that original application to today, I feel.
I wouldn't disagree that it's longer than the usual time that we would take to get to this point, but I think you've alluded to one key issue that's occurred in that period, which was COVID. I think the other issue was from the operation of the applicant's point of view was that they have changed their kind of makeup, as it were, there was a change of hands there, and I think that has, to a degree, delayed this matter coming forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, I don't think we've got any further questions, and I do apologise to officers for taking our time and grilling you on those, but that's what we're here for. And also, under the new constitution, we can't ask questions of anybody else. So, unfortunately, officers are going to take the brunt of it from now on. We do, however, have